Okay. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the ninth and final installment of y'all having to listen to me yabber for an hour on the Christian discipline of community. It has been exciting to have all of you. I mean, and the all is a very important word here.
Yes.
Of y'all. All y'all, Ewans for our friends up in the Northwest, being a part of this and being so engaged. But before we get started, where did Jerry go?
Who knows?
Jerry had a public service announcement, so we'll give him a chance when he comes.
I have an announcement. Get somebody else to be on the nominating committee besides me. I'm too old.
Jane asked for a substitute on the nominating committee. So let's,
What are you nominating?
who are we nominating?
Yeah, what?
All the elders and all the deacons.
Every year, this is.
It's very easy, and look at the bright side. If you serve on it, you aren't going to be an elder, and you're not going to be a deacon. So look at the bright side.
Max, it's not supposed to work that way. We're supposed to serve because we're called to serve, and to be eager
If
to
you
serve.
feel called to serve, don't join the nominating committee.
You can be on the nominating committee and still be nominated.
You might even volunteer.
If you so choose. I did it last year, so it's
Well, I'm uncalled.
support committee, but Jane does not Zoom, and there's gonna be a lot of meetings that are Zoom, so
Or if we're doing.
we need somebody from the Sunday school class to
We need,
honor her up and.
the challenge has been raised, someone from the Sunday school class.
Let's see who God is telling me it should be.
Before I nominate Ed,
God
I'm
is
gonna nominate
calling,
Ed for it's over.
God is calling somebody. Somebody who like.
Oh, yeah, you just rolled off a bit. Taking a knee, drinking water, got it.
Woody's.
Pam Snowden is the chairman. She said if we don't get somebody, we'll just do without it.
Get Brandon Sell, he's young and cute.
You can't nominate.
Well, Richard's younger. Richard, how about one of y'all on the nominating committee? We do need a sub.
I walked in kind of
You
late.
walk in, that's perhaps you walk in last in class. Okay. Richard takes it under consideration. All right, so seriously though, if anyone does feel called to do so, please let me or Jane or Jerry know at the end of the class. We need the work. And the whole point here, and this is what we've been talking about for 9 months, is finding those ways. This is what we're talking about today, finding those ways that we can effect action in the community, to participate in the discipline of community. So do consider.
Okay.
Let us open with prayer. Lord, thank you for a gorgeous spring day. Thank you for the opportunity to come together in community, the opportunity to look hard in the mirror to see where we are, to see our position on the couch and maybe consider getting off the couch and getting involved and getting engaged and being a part of a broader community that you call us to. I ask that you guide our steps, that you encourage our missteps and encourage us when we misstep, brother, and keep us focused on serving and loving you, serving and loving our neighbor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so today is the last class. We talked about several things. I'm not going to go through it all, but we talked about the 2 greatest commandments. 1, love God with everything. And actually, a comment that we hit on this past week in our men's Bible study, love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your body, all your soul. All, even the bad parts. And to me that was sort of a shocking consideration. How do I love God with the bad parts of me? Because God's already loved us, right? That's part of that how. And we're not going to explore that too far, but the whole point is, it's not all right, let me do 5 things today and 4 things tomorrow and hit a checklist. It is not a checklist. And then love your neighbor as you love yourself. Some days, in following the same line of thought, some days I like me an awful lot. Some days I acknowledge I'm a pretty awful human being. It goes also with our neighbor. Some days my neighbor's fantastic. Some days not so much. And some days we still have to make it to the next day. So the inspiration is to never quit, right? To always keep loving. Loving is not a destination. Loving is a path and a way. To consider your neighbor, to consider yourself, to consider your God. Okay. And then Micah tells us to do what? We talked about this last week. Anybody remember? It's right here on the page.
I didn't bring last week's page.
Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly. These are ways, I think. I'm looking at these as instructions on the how. You know, if my goal is to love God as I love myself love God with all of myself, and love my neighbor as I love myself, how can I do that? Especially when I'm a pretty rotten character, right? With kindness, with justice, and humility. And that's where last week we started talking about the justice piece of it, and I think instead of the justice piece of it, it's the whole piece of it. It's the loving piece. So let's take out the justice. And remember, we're loving three characters here: God, ourselves, and our neighbor. Wow, we started with the discipline of community as if being on a sports team. And now we're down to three universal elements: God, our neighbor, and ourselves. And we're called to love. All right, we love with kindness, we love with justice, and we love with humility. We got to get off the couch. You can't sit on the couch and exercise love. You can't do anything except play with the remote control and sip your Coca-Cola and eat your popcorn while you're on the couch. You're not going to get anything done. Got to get off the couch, right? We talked about that last week. And so what has been our goal all along? Our three goals that I would tweak ever so slightly from week to week. Goal number one, educate us. We educated ourselves on what a discipline is, what a community is, what kindness is. Actually, I found kindness, my notes, last week I told you I had forgotten, or it appeared I had forgotten my kindness notes. Those became extra innings when Mandy cut me off at 9 weeks. So I had to move those to free baseball. You'll only get that in the printed copy that I'll send out next week. Sorry about that. We educated ourselves on these ideas and these applications. And we had some fantastic dialogue throughout that. So today, and as we wrap up, we educate ourselves on the need to act. Challenging ourselves to find practical ways. Because we can get stuck not knowing what to do. We can get stuck focused on the enormity of a completely impossible task and never take that first step. You know that old proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with?
One step.
One step. And I'm one step closer. You just got to keep chucking. And then third, the goal that has been consistent throughout these 9 weeks is I've challenged us to change ourselves, to look in the mirror. If you are comforted by this conversation, you're not looking at it right. If you're like, I got this, I'm good, check, I can do 2 out of 3, I'm good. No, we're not doing it well enough. If we were doing it well enough, we wouldn't have this problem. Be challenged by this text. And we have covered 1.5 miles of text, have we not? Every week I realize I have way more text to chew on than could possibly be chewed in 45 minutes. And so, that's where we are. Challenged to change ourselves. So what's my prayer for the outcome here? Is that we become different. 1 degree, half a degree, 10 degrees. The sheer fact that suddenly I'm staring at 50 people in a Sunday school class means that prayer is being answered. Gives me chills just thinking about it. The dialogue which we have enjoyed when I stop talking is a prayer that has been answered. Let us not stop that. This is goodness. This is greatness for us and how we can do what we're called to do. All right. So looking at the notes, we've got a couple more copies of the notes. Does anybody need, or can they share? Luis, can you pass one back to Randy?
Yes.
This is on the floor.
So last week I sort of realized, and if y'all hadn't figured out, I was sort of making this up as I go along. I would take feedback from y'all that would inform how I would do the following week. Now last week it dawned on me a sort of solution path. I'm a technical architect. That's what I do for a living. After 27 years of playing cyber and signal in the Army, you solve problems. And I'm kind of like an engineer, except I'm fun at parties. Love you, George. And so you have kind of a path where you address the who, what, when, where, how, and then not. So let's walk through that. So the who is this Christian discipline about? And it's about you and me. And the what? Choosing to come together in accordance with the law. Remember, a discipline, we talked about the very first week, the discipline is the choice to be a part of a community set aside. The discipline is the choice to adhere to and accept a set of standards and laws, right? It's a choice that you get to make, or not make. It's up to you. Ain't nobody forcing you. That's the beauty and the terror, in my opinion, of today's church. The government's not forcing us to do this. You're not having to pay your taxes based on your membership as the colonial times in the Anglican Church. Not at all. We get to choose to be here on Sunday morning. And how we choose to do it matters. When? Always. Remember 3 weeks ago, Linda brought up, how do we do it? I set a challenge. Do 5 things a day. Encounter 5 people with love and humility. Do it distinctly and deliberately, right? And there's a lot of concern. How on earth do I get to 5? 5 became a thing. 5's not a thing. 5's not a thing. 5's a made-up number. The thing is, every day, all day, find opportunities to love your neighbor, to be and celebrate community with one another.
Reminds me of that title of Bob Goff's book, Everybody Always.
Ooh, I don't know that one, because we read the other one when I was here.
Right, that was the one after that.
Okay. Where do we do this? Where are you? Where are you? Here.
Wherever we are.
Here, not being here, but here is wherever you are, whenever you are. We have a choice to do it well, to love God with our good parts, to do it poorly, to love God with our bad parts, to love our neighbor with our good parts, love our neighbor with our bad parts, and so on. And how? Seeking, I think the seeking is part of that getting off the couch. Seeking and doing justice with kindness and humility. Justice, love, engagement. Pick a thing. So our goal is to get into this, what I just made up a term, spectrum of action here. If I'm on the couch, I'm not active, right? I'm lethargic, I'm a lump on a log. But if I'm at least off the couch, now we're into the spectrum. And over here is the Mother Teresa sort of like solving the world, Martin Luther King, these salvation type characters is way out there. We could be there. That is not off the table. But it's not an immediate, as soon as I get off the couch, you've got to be there. This is about getting us engaged. Why? If all of us legitimately got here, we're off the couch, my heart's engaged, I'm not really doing much else. But if all of us did that much, how do you think the world would be different?
It sure be better.
Why? That's what I want to talk about today.
Well, then do it.
Hey, Carl, I feel like something's missing. Like, I feel like it should be hearts engaged. I mean, your theme was community.
Great catch, Woody.
And you go, engage, engage hearts. We can only do that with one another. I mean, in Genesis, everything was good. He saw it, it was good, it was good, it was good. The first thing that was not good, it is not good for man to be alone. right? And we can take this as an isolated project of getting off the couch and, you know, doing something individual. I don't think that's how, I mean, I heard a definition of a Christian. A Christian is somebody who's met another Christian. Yeah.
Wow.
That we only become persons in community. And it seems like a lot of what you're saying could be misinterpreted. I know your point is community as some individual project of ours, but it's never individual.
So Woody's right. I mean, it does start with you. It starts with your choice to get off the couch. But the immediate first step is to find one more Christian.
That the spectrum of apathy will be stillborn unless we're in a community that we can hold one another accountable and together.
Right. So yes, if you're just by yourself and you're off the couch, it's like you're standing on the start line of the race. Well, yeah, you ain't really racing yet. You're off the couch, but you ain't racing. You get two people, then you got an opportunity for a race. And then when the community comes together, you can have a race. You can do something, be a part of something.
And Jesus sent them out in twos.
He did. For where there are how many or more? Where there are two or more, who is with you? Jesus. That's powerful. That means me and Ron can make a difference just by being two of us, right? And doing it, and I believe we can. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say last summer, my mom passed away. I was so heartened because I moved here and didn't have a community. And the minute that my mom passed, nobody wrote and said, let me know if there's something I can do for you. They just did it. This food showed up at my door. My daughter was picked up. Coffee was delivered. I mean, they didn't say, hey, we're so sorry. Let us know that nobody wants to tell you what they need when they're suffering. You just act. That's where the acting comes from. It's like you're just compelled to go pull their weeds from their yard because they're too sick to do it, or it's just seeing what needs to be done for a person and acting upon that. It's not the lip service of, oh, please let us know if there's some. No one wants to let you know that. They isolate themselves in their pain and in their struggle. So you just do it for them. Imagine that's what I'd want done for me, and you act upon that. And no one's gonna say, "Wow, I wish you hadn't brought me coffee. You just overstepped there."
You said no one ever.
Yeah. Wish you hadn't come to knock on my door and see if I'd showered in the last 3 days.
Hey, when I was deployed, it's a very similar story.
Yeah.
Ann Hensley wasn't here. Angel was by herself, and it was early on in the cycle. We just didn't know how this thing was going to go, and I'm off doing the thing. We had a friend in town. This is in Spartanburg, and she would call. Angel would pick up the phone. That was the mistake. Angel picked up the phone, right? My friend would say, dinner's at 6, and hang up. Dinner's at 6. Just do it. Dinner's at 6, guys. You're not going to not show up. Anyway. All right, so now we're talking about, I'm off the couch and I'm in the game. Luis.
I think, I was thinking in sports when you were talking about that, because we all have already had chosen a team. So Team God, I guess. We're good as spectators because we go to every meet. We are sitting in the bleachers cheering up and following the team. But only the players in the grounds are the ones that are going to the battle of trying to keep up the game and make it going. So I think if I become, instead of a spectator, a player, then I'm doing something. Because I think we are all very good as spectators, and we know exactly good fans, but just not good players.
Get on the field. Okay, now you're on to one of my favorite quotes. Teddy Roosevelt, the man in the arena. Okay, if you haven't read that, Google it, because I'm going to butcher it, but Google it today because it will change, in my world, it'll change the way you think about things. And Teddy says, it is not the critic who counts, the spectator, the one taking notes. It is the man in the arena. And he painted a picture of a boxing match. He's getting pounded. He's getting his rear end kicked. He's being beaten. But he is in there, and he gets up and does it again. And he gets up and does it again. We got to get in the field. Get on the field.
I think
One of my biggest, yeah.
One of the problems is if we think the field is Sunday, only on Sunday.
Field's not Sunday. When is it? It's every time.
That's what you were talking about, it's individually, what we can do individually is we have to change our way of looking that we are Christians all day, every day. The game is every day, every moment. And I couldn't help but think of Dick Halverson, who was a Presbyterian minister, who was chaplain of the Senate, and a Presbyterian minister in D.C. He had a benediction that he did every Sunday. It made me think of this, what he said. He said, "You go nowhere by accident. Wherever you go, God is sending you. Wherever you are, God has put you there. He has purpose in putting you there. Christ who indwells you has something he wants to do through you wherever you are. Believe this and go in grace and love." And that's, I mean, that to me, it just makes me think, as soon as I walk out of the house, God's got some purpose for me.
And I consider that a miracle. Allow for the miraculous, guys. Yeah, Mike.
I'm kind of a numbers person, so if you look at something like it, if you put this in here, you're gonna get this on the other side, but.
See, that's why engineers aren't fun at parties.
But if you put the little bit of effort that you put in, or whatever, changes the equation though. So it
Yeah.
started out here and it's gonna end up somewhere else, so it may have a ripple effect initially, but you never know where it's gonna end up.
That's the point. Get on the field, just do. The miraculous will take over. Because wherever you go, God's put you there. Why? Who knows? God does. We don't. And that's the thing. If we 50 are doing it this much, how much is it going to change the environment? If just observing a scientific, and I'm drawing a blank on the factor, observing a phenomenon changes the phenomenon, how much more will we acting in our world? Right? Okay, keep talking. Where we at? We're off the script now. I love it. Best part. Let's see if there's anything. I'm gonna close with
uncertainty
C.S. Lewis.
principle.
What's that?
Heisenberg's uncertainty principle.
Thank you.
You change the picture by looking at it.
Think about it. You alter it just simply by acknowledging it. That's Young's corollary, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, by the way. Nobel Prize inbound. All right, what else? Just do. Get on the field. Allow for the miraculous.
Listen,
Listen.
listen.
Listening is critical to engaging your heart gear, right? My ear gear, my mind gear, my heart gear. And I'm going to add a piece to that. Be present. Where? Where you are. When? Right now. And that's hard. Because I don't know about you, I've got to travel to Charleston Monday, and I got work meetings all day. I got 3 interviews to conduct Monday afternoon. By the time I get to the hotel, how am I going to be present for anything? And my days are no busier or less busy than yours. Except maybe Jim's, he doesn't do much.
You're supposed to be present where you are.
Right.
Except when we call on you.
By the way, y'all should know that Jim and George climbed up in the steeple this past weekend because I held the ladder because I'm afraid of wasps. And they went up there and like for hours working on the leaks up there. God bless people like Jim and George.
Good for you guys.
Truly. How do you be present?
We're being engaged, right?
Right. What's the opposite of being present?
Cars.
Detached or disengaged.
Not there.
Detached, disengaged, not there.
Mind wandering.
I'm sorry, mind wandering. You know, selfish. To me, that seems selfish because I'm not practicing a discipline. I'm just doing whatever. Because as we've said all along, I'm not much,
But I'm all I think about.
but I'm all I think about. I'm cool. Yes, ma'am.
Because listening is a discipline. I teach 6-year-olds how to listen, and that is so difficult because they'll have one person to listen to, and I'll say, turn and talk to your neighbor about your favorite animal. And then I'll turn and say, well, what did Luis say about his favorite? I forgot. About the animal. I'm like, he just told you. But I said, well, you didn't forget, you never heard him. So then I say, at the end of this, I'm going to actually put you on the spot, and you're going to have to tell me what he said. Oh gosh, okay. And then we have to revoice. What I heard you say was, but I think, there's so much pressure to get the academics and everything that just a simple act of listening to one another, I never really put a lot of emphasis on that until recently. But you can see how years and years of that can be compounded, that it's not something you ever really learned how to do.
You get calluses over your ears, I think. You stop doing it. I'm horrible at it. And I also compounded, I have a terrible memory. So if I don't write it down, it never happened. I think both are a result of me not listening. What's the chief resource required for listening? Time. Yeah, and what do we complain we don't have any of?
Time.
You got the same amount as the next person. Napoleon said on the battlefield, he says, my commanders can ask me for anything. They cannot ask me for time. Because time is the essence of success, certainly in the battlefield, certainly in relationships, certainly in community. And so what I'd like to do now is, all right, so we've got the framework. Y'all are on it. We've had all the material. Now it's time for the test. Let's share times these things affected you. Like my friend who called my wife and said, hey, dinner's at 6, click. Tell some stories. Let's figure out things that we've done. Because the one thing I don't want to do, because we talked about race, we talked about economic disparity, we talked about educational disparity, and all these things matter critically. But they can very quickly become a checklist. And I'm going to suggest to us the checklist is not the point. There's no intrinsic value to change our worship style, your worship style, their worship style for a mishmash of nobody's worship style. Right? There's no intrinsic value there. The intrinsic value is loving the people, serving the people. Right? And so I don't want to chase checklists or metrics because that's not the point. My heart's engaged, our hearts are engaged, we become a community. So share some ideas on when community, Christian community, has benefited you.
Like when you're sick.
Like when you're sick. Tell me an example.
I was very sick in San Antonio. And I can remember lying in the bed and asking, where is God? And crying. And this wonderful nurse came in and said, he's right here with you. And held my hand. Right under it.
Presence. And that's something we can all do, right? Seize those moments. When I know and I'm in relationship with Donna, and I know Donna has a need, I could be there. Because now I know Donna. 9 weeks ago, I didn't know Donna. And I didn't know Faye. And I didn't know, well, I knew Jerry and Jane, but not as well as I want to. You know, and so on. We have to know one another.
It sometimes happens when you don't know someone else.
Ooh, we make an example?
Several years ago, I was traveling in Scotland with a gentleman, and he died of a heart attack. And one of the ladies who was on the bus said to me, I'm not going to let you here by yourself. I'm going to stay here with you until we get all this arranged. And she didn't know me from Adam. I mean, we had seen and said hello and what have you for maybe 3 days, and that was it. And she stayed there with me until my daughter-in-law came and.
Wow.
I mean, she missed 2 or 3 days of her vacation doing that for me.
Wow. You know, in the construct of the military, those kind of things become, you're taught, you're expected, you're judged on how well you seize those opportunities. You know, if my brother's down, I pick my brother up, my sister down, I grab her ruck and carry it on, you know, whatever the case is. Luis?
This is a military story. In 1994, when I went active duty, I went to Fort Hood, and it's the first time I have traveled without my family or arriving to a destination that nobody's waiting for me at the airport. So as I'm picking up my duffel bags and my few things, this gentleman came to me and asked me, he said, hey, where you coming from? I said, well, I'm just coming from home. It's my first duty station. And he didn't even know me. He said, you know something? You don't have to take the bus because my wife's gonna pick me up and I can take you to replacement to check in. So he took me to check in. Then he told me, whatever you put the stuff in the room they're gonna give you tonight, and I can come later and pick you up and have supper in my house. And I went to their house to eat. And not only they did that, they gave me a car for a week to drive until I bought a car, because they told me, hey, listen, my wife has a car and she doesn't need it, so you can drive it this week until you can buy yourself a car. And I only met those people, you know, when I left the island, I'm looking over the window, living in Puerto Rico, and you see the ocean, and the only thing coming to my mind is like, when I'm gonna come back? Like, I'm going that way, like, I'm leaving. So the military has done a lot of great things for my family and I, but I think that God put those people there to help me in the moment that He knows that I needed them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what are the odds any of us would really do that? We're hanging out at Augusta, you see, you know, it's the airport, we're tired from our big trip to Atlanta. And all of a sudden, well, of course, if you grabbed a private today, you'd be in all kinds of trouble for doing it. But the point being, you see somebody, we get nervous on extending that level of hospitality because we fear we're at risk. Take fear out of the equation, or at least try to. More stories. Yes, ma'am.
This is many, many years ago, and I guess it's listening to people talk.
You're only 27, Donna. How can you?
Yeah, I know, well, it was 17 years ago. But many years ago, I was going to school in Miami. My parents were in Michigan. I was going home for Christmas. I was going to be met at the airport by my mother, and it was a direct flight from Miami to Detroit. We got grounded in Cleveland because of weather. I had no money because I didn't need any money. I was going home. And I had not the right clothes to be grounded in Cleveland in a winter storm. And this gentleman came up to me and he said, let me take you and buy you a cup of, and I said, no, I don't need anything. Well, time went on and we were getting ready to reboard the plane, and I was standing outside waiting to get shoulder. And it's the same man who said, young lady, you will not allow me to buy you coffee. I will not allow you to stand out here in the cold with no coat on, and literally turned me around, walked me back into the airport and stood with me until we climbed the stairway to get on the plane. And I have no idea who that man was. I've never seen him again. But listening to these stories, that's somebody up there maybe taking care of me.
Yeah, this is what we're talking about. How awesome would it be if that was the norm in your community?
Yeah.
Right? Now we're changing the world, one little place at a time, because it'll start kudzuing. Kudzu and bamboo are the only two plants that grow fast enough you actually see them grow. And kudzu, or bamboo, you can't kill. What if Christian community was more like kudzu? There's a thought for maybe a different class. All right, I need some stories from this side of the room. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, as most of you know, I was diagnosed with cancer 4.5 years ago. And don't Google anything. You are going down a rabbit hole you will never escape from. But the odds are not good, and they never have been. And I Googled stuff, and I think the community and the prayer and the uplifting and God basically saying, stop crying, be disciplined, and focus on now. You're alive, 4.5 years in, and you just got a clean skin, so stop.
Yeah. And sometimes, when you read the book of Job, I view Job's friends in two distinct ways. The first half, Job's friends are present with him. They're sitting with him and they're just being. And I think there's a positive value, especially for men. You don't have to tell the story over and over and over again. You just sort of be. I think that's the right answer. Now, later in the story where they kind of get stupid, it's a different story for a different time, but they become useless. But just sometimes just being. Like Shannon said, those folks who huddled around her, they couldn't solve it. We can't solve it, but we can be. We can be. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was just thinking closer to home also, and just all the people that have touched and taught my children in this church. Anybody who does something for my child does something for me. They're older now, but just all the people, the community of the church that have been parents to my children.
And how many people have those coach, teacher, trainer, mentor, leader roles for our children? Some that we'll never even meet or know.
Y'all remember when we passed out $20 bills? Everybody
Yes.
we just go find a $20 moment. We gave everybody in the congregation a $20 bill in a little envelope to go find a person that needs $20. We started doing that in our Wednesday Bible study. We started talking about looking for $20 moments. They may not need a $20 bill, but they need you. But you have to look for it.
You gotta look for it.
Everybody had a $20 bill. Kind of made them go look for a $20 moment.
Yeah, because I'm not going to spend it on lunch for me, because that'd be wrong. What if we looked at our resources that way? Looking for those $20 moments. It's not ours anyway. Our time, our resources, our blessings in this church right now, not ours. They're God's. What are we doing with it?
Many of you have done Homebound Communion. That's part, I guess, the deacons were tasked with doing that. I guess they still do it.
Well, COVID sort of hosed it up.
Yeah, but I remember going, and I really didn't like the idea of having to do that. I was kind of nervous, and I didn't feel qualified, didn't feel like I was right for it. But anyway, they sent us out in teams, and the person I've been with, fortunately done it before, first 2 times, so they always send them out in twos again. And I remember going to several of the people who were, sometimes it's near the end of their life and they're not very responsive. And then when you start going through it, and they're very quiet, and then you get to the part where you have to do the Lord's Prayer or something. All of a sudden, they start saying it with you. That's the one time they got engaged enough to do that, and it was so meaningful. And that's something that when you do that, I don't know how much they get out of it, but you, in doing that, get so much more.
To me, that's allowing for miraculous. You're being present in that moment, not knowing, not sure. And then something truly phenomenal occurs right in front of you, right to you. Nadine, I remember James.
I was just thinking back to, everybody was like, oh, you're a pastor, you're in seminary. What would you possibly mean, right? But we're very fallible creatures. But when I was in seminary, I did work at a hospital in Charlotte as a chaplain. And my first day, I think it was even within the first hour, as I recall. And my supervisor was about 1,000 feet tall. He was this huge, very, very wonderful, had been a chaplain forever and ever. He's my supervisor. We get a call to a code in the cardiac unit. And we get up there and it's just chaos. There's this huge family. And this man is not, I think he was only in his late 40s. And he's coded. And it ended up being a very long saga, but he never came out of that code, basically. But I was so overwhelmed with the grief and the emotion of the family that I was useless. I was the most useless thing there. And my supervisor, thankfully, was this wonderful, calm presence. But they're crying, I'm crying. I'm like, God, why am I here? I can't help anybody like this. And one of the nurses just came, and she didn't really say anything. She just put her arm around my shoulder, and she says, just come with me. And she took me to their private nursing break room so I could just get it together. She goes, just stay here as long as you need to. And just that kindness of, this is a lot to deal with, and you'll get there, but there was no judgment on that. It wasn't like, well, we thought you were one of the chaplains. What is your problem? You're a big hot mess. She was just so kind and so aware of what was happening that this was just too much for me in the moment, and I'd literally just gotten there, and I appreciated that so much, that she wasn't judging. She just like, here's a person who just needs to go and collect themselves, and I'm gonna give her a place to do that. And it was such a little thing, but it was so meaningful. And I don't remember that nurse's name. Obviously, I saw her on shifts and things, but I don't remember her name. I just remember her kindness.
Nurses do good.
Nurses
Yes,
are
nurses
good.
are
Yes, sir.
I had a similar experience to Michael in serving Homebound Communion. The first time I served Homebound Communion, it was to Colin McKnight, Jim McKnight's father. And it was Jane Houston and I remember Jane and I, on the way down, were very nervous to serve Homebound Communion for the first time. We served Homebound Communion to Colin McKnight. When we got to the exit door to leave, we both stopped. Jane looked at me, I looked at Jane, and I said to Jane, and she said to me exactly the same thing. Who was ministering to who there? We felt uplifted by Colin McKnight. I mean, and at that point we looked, we said, we want to serve Homebound Communion to Colin McKnight every time. It's just such a wonderful experience.
And that describes the benefits of the community, where all members of the community, those that are brand new and just were invited in, those who have been a part of the establishment of it, are ministered to. We all receive these gifts. That's part of what God built into us. It is not good for us to be alone. It's good for us to be in community, and that's what we're talking about here. So, as this time of Sunday gym, we decided it was not Sunday school anymore, right? It's Sunday gym because you come in for a workout. As this block of Sunday gym ends, your homework lasts forever as long as you're willing to do it. Look for $20 moments. Just do. Dinner's at 6. Get on the field. Don't spectate. Allow for miraculous. You don't know what's about to happen. Listen. And be present. If we could do that, finding those 5 opportunities, forget 5, 50, 500. We could change not only this church, we could change this town, we could change by doing. Forget about the end goal. Focus on what you can do in those areas. And I'll read through, it took me forever to find the actual quote that was referenced in the C.S. Lewis movie. And I encourage you to read the whole because it's really a beautiful passage. But C.S. Lewis says, there are no ordinary people. You ain't ordinary. I'm not ordinary. The folks who are really different than us down the street are not ordinary. The folks that we work for are not ordinary. You have never talked to a mere mortal. You are immortal, Ron.
Thank you.
Donna, you are immortal. Luis, George, we have souls. We believe this, right? Mm-hmm. We have souls and been touched by and acknowledged by the God of creation. We are not mortal. No matter what screw up thing I did this morning, or I'm gonna do tomorrow, or how I yell at the person in traffic next to me, or how they do something dumb. It's an immortal I'm talking to. We all have stories in this mortal frame. But we are not mere mortals. It is immortals with whom we joke, work, marry, snub, and exploit. immortal horrors, or everlasting splendors. And our charity must be real and costly love. These things take time, sacrifice, and most of all, vulnerability from you, from me. Something else I'm not really good at, right? All of us. But your neighbor, I love this statement. Your neighbor is the holiest object presented to your senses. That gives me chills just thinking about it. I mean, I woke up this morning, I went outside, I worked all day in the yard. That way, Denise won't yell at me anymore for having the nastiest yard on the street. And it was really beautiful, and I'm having my cup of coffee, and the sun's coming up, and the birds are chirping. It's a really wonderful moment, but that pales in comparison to what Lewis says. Y'all, all y'all, are the holiest objects presented to my senses. Okay, I gotta recalibrate some. Closing comments? And Jim will be complete.
May I mention one thing?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
I think what you have written on the right side of the board is very, it's valid, strongly. But I think the first thing that we always get lost in is not trusting God. When we love God with all our heart, mind, and soul, we also then forget that part sometimes, and we get stuck with our fallible issues. The trust of God, allowing Him to use our weaknesses, to use us, which were the disciples, which were all of the different people in the Bible as examples of people that weren't perfect, and He used them all for His glory, and we have to keep that in our hearts fully. And be that first step too.
Trusting God you're absolutely right. Trusting God enables us to get off the couch. If you're sitting on the couch, there's kind of a litmus test there. Come on, really? Are you trusting God? Oh, I'm reading the Bible every day. Get off the couch. Thank you. Thank you for really focusing us back on that. And that reminds me of another, man, if you want to do another class, all the losers in the Bible. I'd love to teach that one. Peter's number one. He's a limit, complete limit. Okay, well guys, I have thoroughly enjoyed the last 9 weeks. I have enjoyed it.
Back again.
So I'm up for free agency right now, so we'll figure all that out. Let us close in prayer. Mighty God, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for what has become a $20 or $50 or $100 moment. Thank you for this chance to relook our community. We are in community, Lord, to help remind us to trust you, to see your purposes, and to just take the next steps. I ask that you guide each one of us as we leave this place, that you put our feet forward and on your path, that you guide us if we wander, that you instruct us and lead us where we don't know. In Jesus' name we together pray. Amen.